I know.
All
That's
right.
what I like too.
That's the hard thing about it.
Yes.
Good evening, everybody.
Good
Evening. It's good to see everyone. Thank you for coming to the museum's Third on Third program. This is our monthly lecture series. So every third Friday of every month, we have a speaker come and give us a talk on a topic. So we're happy that we have so many of you out here today to see us. There are a couple points of housekeeping that I'm going to hit, and then I will turn it over to our speaker. Sound good? All right. So March 4th is going to be our next brown bag lunch, which is another regular lecture series that we have where people can come in at around noon. It's the first Wednesday of every month. And you are allowed to bring your lunch, and then you're going to have a speaker give a presentation on another topic. This one is also going to be tied into the right whales. We're going to wrap up our whale programming with Miss Teresa Hartz, and she's going to be talking about the whale calving season for this past year. Our next big event that has to do is going to be on March 15th. That is our Mad Hatter Victorian Tea. These are Victorian teas put together by our education director, Thea Seagraves. The theme is obviously fun hats. Find yourself a fascinator, get some friends, and come see us. There is a prize for the best, fanciest hat. April 10th is our annual golf tournament. There's going to be more actual information on paper downstairs, so as you're leaving, you can pick it up. Sign up, get some friends. It's 4-player teams with a handicap scramble format with a 12 p.m. shotgun start at the Amelia Island Golf Club. Now, about our presenter tonight, Nick Williams is the founder of the executive biologist at the Whale Guard Bioacoustic Research Incorporated and a naturalist guide at the Ritz-Carlton on Amelia Island. His work has been featured in Travel and Leisure, USA Today, The News Leader, and other publications. He's passionate about marine conservation, sharing the story of North Atlantic right whales, and helping the public connect with the natural world through science and storytelling. So, without further ado, I'm going to turn the program over to him. Thank you very much.
All right. Ladies and gentlemen, hi. I'm that guy you probably know from 5 Minutes at the Ritz-Carlton. So today we're going to be celebrating our right whales. Got a little party going on. And I do want to give a shout out to the Amelia Island Whale Investors for setting up the exhibit down there, as well as the museum, of course. And it's just a very, very wonderful piece to educate people about the whales and get that passion going. Because one thing that makes me very passionate about these animals is I grew up in Jacksonville, right in whale calving grounds. And most of the people in my own city don't even know these things exist. And that's one thing we got to change, because these are one of the rarest, most precious animals in the world. This would be like growing up in South Africa and not knowing what a rhino is. So this is something that we really, really need to spread the education. So we got some happy whales up there having a little party. I don't know if the flag's covering my guy's balloons over there, but he's ready for the season. All right, so a quick little intro over here. Technological difficulties, sorry.
No worries. Let me see what I can do to fix it.
So brief little introduction on our right whales. So they are one of 3 different types of right whales. We have North Atlantic, North Pacific, and Southern right whales. So out of the 3 species, North Pacific is probably the worst off, followed by our hometown hero, North Atlantic right whale. And then we also have the Southern right whale, who is honestly not really endangered anymore, so that's a big victory. Okay, perfect. So the Southern right whales actually taught us a little bit about our North Atlantics. So the average North Atlantic right whale, due to human-made causes that we can all prevent, usually only lives to somewhere between 80 and 45 years. Well, we thought that was the lifespan of the Southern right whale too, but after that victory we found out Southern right whales live to be 150 years old on average. So there is a chance that our guys could match that. We don't know. Nobody does, because we haven't been keeping score since after whaling about their ages. So they also have some good genes. So they belong to this whale clade Eubalinia up here. And when we talk about Eubalinia, they also have a very famous relative that a lot of people that are kind of casual into the whale community might know. That is the bowhead whale. Anybody heard of him?
Yeah. Yes.
The entire whale investors. The Mr. Bowhead whale's average lifespan is 273 years, making it one of the oldest animals alive. So we can kind of learn a little bit about the genetics of Eubalinia for a lot of different things. And one other thing I'll give a shout out to Bowhead before I get back on topic. Bowhead is actually one of the animals known to be immune to cancer. A bowhead whale cannot develop cancer. They've been doing some testing on this. and they have a double mutation of a certain gene that corrects their genetic telomeres that really prevents them from developing mutation. Now, we know the southern right whale and the North Atlantic don't quite have that, so compare and contrast could actually help us out a lot medically. And that's just one of the many things that right whales can help us with. But before I go too deep down that rabbit hole, I want to explain the difference between the whale families. So when I say whale, I guarantee you probably pictured Pacific Life commercial whale doing his little pose, jumping out of the water. So that is a humpback whale, and humpback whales are in the family rorqual. Now, rorqual are a lot faster than our right whales. They have an expanding throat, and they have to go fast to open that expanding throat. So when they are filter feed, they eat krill. Humpbacks specifically can still eat fish, but most of them eat krill. They go speeds up to 37 miles per hour. So they can actually hit a pretty decent sprint. And they feed by going down and up in the water column, so they kind of launch from the bottom a little bit. Our guys don't do that. Our guys go about like 8 to 10 miles per hour. And they like to hang out near the surface of the water, and that's one of the reasons why we got to watch out for those boat strikes all the time. Because they do like to be at the surface more resting, especially down here when they have their babies. But when they feed, they actually feed horizontal, so whether the krill's at the bottom or if it's at the top, they'll go in a straight line, where these other whales are bouncing up and down all the time. And that's why it's not as much of a problem. It still happens to the other species of whales, but they're not as affected by what the right whales are affected by. And then I got to just point out this guy. Not even going to try to pronounce that. It's literally only the gray whale. So I'm just going to call him the gray whale. Gray whales are significant because they are actually the only baleen whales that are bottom feeders. They tend to eat shellfish off the bottom of the ocean. They're benthic. But we're going to get to the star of the show, our beautiful North Atlantic right whale. Good old Univalenia galensis over here. So this guy has a very, very special history, a history with not just our island, which our island is a significant part of the history of the North Atlantic right whale, but also a history with this nation. So it goes all the way back to Plymouth, and even before that a little bit. So a lot of people know that the Caribbean was really the first part that Europeans started exploring, but a lot of people forget about Nova Scotia. John Cabot came there a few years after Columbus found his islands down in 1492. And a lot of people believe that Cabot was actually following stories of bash whalers. So they were following the then alive population of North Atlantic right whales in Europe. And they would apparently cross-populate all the way to the Americas, and that was one of the reasons why Nova Scotia was kind of registered. And part of the reason why Canada was discovered. So that's a big deal. And they also helped piggyback the entire Industrial Revolution, as for the North Atlantic right whale was the right whale. And it's for reasons that I kind of spoke on. So back in the 1800s, if you were on a dinghy boat, did you want to go for the slow guy that's like 5 miles offshore or the fast guy that's 23 miles out? So most people would go for the right whale because he is just a lot easier to catch up to, essentially. And they hunted these whales tragically for a very long time. Now, in 1860-ish period, they deemed the right whale extinct. And that is actually a really big deal, though, because most whaling didn't happen in the 1800s. That's something a lot of people aren't aware of. So from 1930 to 1940, most whales were killed. And that was because of the industrial harpoon. And they targeted the rorquals. They targeted the bigger baleen. Well, not bigger. The right whale's actually heavier. They're longer. But that gets in scientific debate on what you measure by. But they went for these animals that they didn't have access to previously. And in a decade, almost every whale became endangered and almost went extinct. Now, the Marine Mammal Protection Act has helped with that a lot. And it actually is the story of bioacoustics that really got that act passed. So they started listening to the calls of the whales. Humans recognized intelligence. We stopped wanting to hunt them. And that became legislation sometime around the late 40s. Well, guess who also decided to show back up around the late 40s? This guy, Mr. Current Events. So he apparently found out about the Marine Mammal Protection Act. He's like, you can't shoot me anymore, guys, I'm back. So he decided to come back, and they were rediscovered off of Amelia Island in St. Augustine in the calving grounds. That's when they found the visible population again. So that's just a little warm up to the problems they face. So a lot of you I know are familiar with the problems they face, but I'm going to kind of rehash it anyway. So the biggest problem to these guys is ropes, specifically lobster ropes up in New England. So these guys will actually catch that lobster rope and they can drag it all the way down to Florida. Now we have a lot of brave people and really determined people to stop them, and we have brave people to cut them free, do disentanglements. However, they can be sneaky. There's only like 385 of these guys, and we can't always keep track of them all. And they can make it all the way down to Florida with that rope on them. Division did this year. He was a male right whale that managed to be spotted around South Georgia, and we had a massive rescue effort for him. Unfortunately, he didn't make it. So there is that problem, and that is the biggest problem. It's also a big problem because it does something else to these animals. So right whales, after they have a baby, if they're a female, they need about 4 years to recover that. Each time they get entangled, that gets slowed down a little bit. So it can stall all the way to a decade, and that's one of the reasons why we're seeing such a massive uptick, because it's been about a decade since the last uptick. So these, each time they get entangled, they lose the ability to recover, and that calving ability becomes slowed down. Now again, these are slow-growing animals. These are animals that have the potential to live a lot longer than what we currently see them living. And the longer they survive, the more they can reproduce, the better. Because these animals, while we are in a bit of a pickle with them, it is possible. The southern right whale in certain populations is down to 400 too. And as I mentioned at the beginning, some of them are beyond the endangered list now. So there's a lot of hope for these fellas.
Yes.
And one thing I wanted to point out for our right whales, so our right whales are actually one of the easiest whales to recognize an individual of. So I've done a lot of random things as a marine biologist. I've studied manatees, dolphins, and I'm trying to get funded for these fellas. But they're a lot easier to recognize individuals of than manatees and dolphins, believe me. So they have these fun little patches on their nose. These are called callicities. So the black portion of the callicity is their natural callus. The white portion is these little guys that like to hang on to that callus, called whale ice. So, so whales outside their callus patches shed their skin a lot, so the whale ice can't hang on to dear life unless it's on the callus. So that's why they kind of form these unique patterns. And I like to call them their weird beards. One of my favorite right whales is Calvin the right whale. Calvin has a literal goatee. He's like my favorite dude ever. He has a little mustache and a soul patch at the bottom. But you can tell these guys all apart by these callosity patterns, and no two right whale has the same one. As a matter of fact, I might be a little off, but this looks sort of like Boomerang. I can't see the full display of it, but Boomerang's one that I saw this year. So I do a little bit of spotting for the Marine Land Network, but yeah. So this is kind of how we would be able to kind of recognize these guys. We have the difference in their patterns right here. Just like the other animals I've studied, manatees and dolphins, these guys obviously do get scars, and that's another way to identify them. The one I saw last year for the longest, actually had the pleasure of hanging out with Caterpillar for 2.5 hours last year. And Caterpillar gets her name because she has a scar that looks like a caterpillar on her back. So sometimes it is by the scars, but usually it's by the callosity. So this is a very, very good way to tell these guys apart. And for anybody who doesn't know, the New England Aquarium has a great photo log of these guys. If you ever see a right whale on the coast and you're curious, you can go to New England Aquarium's website and figure out who you just met. They have a lot of their life stories on there, so it's a really, really interesting thing. I saw Champagne this year. Champagne had her 4th calf this year. So like they know who her babies are. We kind of have been observing them down in the southern grounds long enough to kind of get their personalities a little bit. So you get to see kind of who's more playful, who has the more calves, and just a little bit of traits about them through the New England website. Now, one thing I always like to bring up when I do my right whale talks, so we all know why we want to protect whales. They're amazing, fascinating creatures. As a matter of fact, the North Atlantic right whale at its maximum size is the 2nd heaviest animal alive. The blue whale obviously being the largest, but so when it comes to weights, today they tend to be somewhere in the 60 tons, but a healthy male right whale can easily reach 70 tons. A female is about 50 tons. But you guys want to have fun? Who wants to guess the heaviest ever? Thanks, Judy.
80 tons, maybe?
A little bit more than an 80 ton. We're going max weight of all time here.
90.
More than 90.
200 tons?
Less. That's a blue whale.
Oh, blue whale. Oh, wow.
150.
117. So for the crowd, one great white shark weighs 1 ton. The largest right whale ever was 117 great white sharks heavy.
Wow.
So that is really, really hard to think about. So we're used to seeing things like an elephant and thinking that's a giant. That is a small fry compared to this guy. And if we go to that blue whale, that 200-ton guy, did you know that a blue whale's tongue is bigger than an elephant? Yeah, so there's a lot of cool stuff going on with their size. But one really cool thing that I like to kind of emphasize is the one question that a lot of people don't ask because the whales are so charismatic, and that's what do these whales do for us? And a lot of it has to do with one of my absolute favorite facts about these animals. So, one fact that you've probably heard before in your life is that whales eat plankton. But one thing that most people don't realize is a whale is a carnivore, and not just a carnivore, an obligate carnivore. It has no omnivory in its diet whatsoever. And that means that its juices can't really digest plants too well, just to put that in plain English. So we have two types of plankton. We have zoo and we have phyto over here. So phytoplankton primarily consists of cyanobacteria and diatom. Now it's a little bit different in its structure than a plant, and even though to summarize it to most people, especially when I'm talking to the kids, I'll call it a plant, it's technically an algae. But one thing that happens that's really cool, so these whales, they go deeper than what the phytoplanktons grow in, and they go for the zooplankton. And then they come up, and even if they swallow a little bit of phytoplankton, a lot of that plankton can actually survive the digestion because, again, it is a carnivore. And it will come out the other end with the world's greatest fertilizer, whale poop. And whales are really, really good at sequestering carbon dioxide. One right whale in a year can sequester 33 tons of CO2. So that's actually more than a lot of forest. Now, one of the big reasons about diatom and cyanobacteria, as you can see on my big fancy Photoshop, is that they produce 40% of Earth's oxygen alone when it comes to cyanobacteria and diatom. Now, if you're talking about oxygen content on Earth, 80% of it comes from the ocean. So the rest of that 80%, of course, would be kelp and coral. But a good portion of that comes from the diatom. Now, when you see a lot of the most sophisticated kind of animal documentaries, anybody seen Planet Earth or Blue Planet? Yep. So you might have seen the sardine run. People that are familiar with the right whale's territory, the cod run happens in Cape Cod. That's how it got the name. And if you're from Alaska, you might see the salmon run. Anybody know who shows up before that? The whales. Now they actually help a lot of that diatom grow, which feeds their plankton and feeds the entire ecosystem. These seasonal seas have some of the biggest biomass on the planet, by the way. They produce a lot of our fisheries and a lot of what we consume. So these animals are very important to us. They are keystone species for the global ocean. And does anybody here know what a keystone species is? Yes, sir.
It allows lots of different species to exist because they exist.
Exactly. Without this guy, it's all going downhill from here. So right now we have humpback whales and other whales kind of holding ground for them while they're endangered. But the more of these animals we get, the better it gets. Now, while we're on plankton talk, right whales are kind of funny because they are very picky eaters. And that is something you wouldn't really expect from a baleen whale, animal that just shoves stuff down its face. But they have specialized baleens, and those baleens are about as tall as that US flag over there. And they can only catch very specific species of copepods. So when we think of zooplankton, krill comes to mind, and I use the puns all the time because one of my favorite little things to tell guests on my tours. So right whales can communicate for over 30 miles away in a not noisy ocean, 20 miles in a noisy ocean. And I like to kind of give this little demonstration. So when these right whales are talking, you have this one guy over there like, hey, what's up, bro? What you doing? I'm krilling. What you doing? Krilling. And then they sink their dives together and eat krill together. Well, I just use that because it rhymes. It's actually copepods. But yeah, so they do have that very specific diet. And even though our lovely Fernandina Beach is packed with lots of Mayport shrimp and lots of krill that any other whale species would love, these guys think it's broccoli and they just spit it out. But yeah, so, okay, well that was into some North Atlantic right whale behavior though. So they are those picky eaters. Another really fun thing about the right whales, and one of my favorite things when I'm watching the right whales, they love to do backstrokes. It's very cute. They like to go out and put their little pectoral fins out of the water and do backstrokes with their babies. It's kind of their way of play. I've had the pleasure last season of seeing Nautilus and Caterpillar. They were two mothers and their babies were having a play date. They were hanging out together. And I actually got to see the rare opportunity of a right whale breach. And the whale ambassadors probably know how rare that is, but I'll let everybody else know that's like once in a blue moon. They're not humpback whales. They're very slow and it takes a lot of effort for them to do that. So they're having a really good time in the breaching. But they will actually sit there on the coast and just stay kind of in that area to let their calf rest. And you can hang out with some of these animals. It's for more than an hour in certain cases. So it is a very, very unique experience to see these animals. And again, they just provide that fascination because what I led with, growing up in this area, you know your manatees, of course. Everybody knows the Florida manatee. You grow up, you know the alligators, these animals that Florida is well known for, but these animals kind of get overlooked, and they are literally one of the most fascinating animals out there, and there's so many mysteries about them, and that's what makes them even more charismatic, because there's what we know about their behavior, and there's a whole lot more that we don't know about their behavior. So these animals are very rare. They're one of the hardest whales to track because of their low population. The estimated count right now is 385 adults and 22 babies, just so you guys are aware of that. That is global population, not what's here. What's here is probably about like 100 and something of them. But they cover the entire eastern seaboard, and this is one of those animals that not only has that charisma, but it does have a lot of history with the nation of the U.S. And one other thing I'd like to point out is if we do let them live as long as they can, that bowhead actually lives, average lifespan is longer than the U.S. The U.S. is only 250 years right now, a bowhead lives 270. So take that as you will. So, yeah, as you can tell, I got a little bit passionate and got my slides out of order, but but yeah, so we kind of bring up the threats that these animals have, and again, that is that rope entanglement. So that rope entanglement, a lot of people don't really get to picture that because we only see the tops of them. So they will get wrapped around on this, and they can usually break those traps pretty easy. It's not like the whale's going to drown, but it will dig into it, and it will slowly kind of carve this animal. It is a very, very brutal thing, and I'm not actually going to undersell it because it is something that people should understand how bad this is. This would be like watching a dog on a chain just grow into its rope to where the rope is embedded in the skin. These are tragedies each time. And the biggest tragedy is we actually have technology that prevents this, and not many people use it. So we have on-demand fishing ropes. There's rope traps where you can just press a button and pull your trap back up where you don't have to leave a rope. And it's literally that easily preventable. And there is a lot of push for it right now, but there's some stubborn holds out because it's expensive. Now, one thing that WhaleGuard aims to do is when we get enough money, we want to buy this and give it to the fisheries for free if they're going to complain about the price. But this is just something that is so easily preventable. Now, even if we do replace all of the traps today, though, there are still going to be some drift rope, and that's one thing that we're also, when I get into what WhaleGuard's mission is, going to hope to deal with as well to help prevent that a little bit. Now, the other big danger is boat strikes. So these animals are protected from large vessels fairly well now, but that doesn't prevent these guys on their yachts from accidentally running into them. So one of my favorite things to talk about, I'm a bioacoustic scientist, and for what you that don't know what that means, that just means I'm fancy Aquaman and I can't swim as many laps. But when it comes to knowing bioacoustics and animal vocalization, right whales are special because they are one of the first animals to be tracked by their vocalization. Now, anybody here go surfing? Surfing. Yeah? Okay. In the past? So one way that I like to explain this is if you were getting ready to go surf and you were sitting in the ocean, what would you want to know about the waves that come at you?
Their height.
Amplitude.
Yeah,
amplitude. Yes, there we go. So the height, and that is actually the same answer, by the way. Height and amplitude are the same thing. So when you go to the height of the wave, you guys ready for the easiest math equation of all time? Amplitude equals distance. They're the same thing. So if your wave is 7 feet, and when that wave starts to crash, that circle is going to be a 7-foot diameter. And if you know the amplitude of a sound, because the sound is a wave as well, then you can use that to calculate the distance. Now, it's a little bit more math on that one. You have to do unit conversions, which anybody that took chemistry knows that sucks, but it is worth it. But they can use this technology to kind of triangulate the location of the whales. There's a little buoy that pings, and then they get the big commercial shipping vessels to move away. Now, one valuable thing that shore spotters do as well is that same function. So the whale ambassadors up here are the local shore spotter network, and down from Ponte Vedra to about close to Daytona, it is the Marineland Project, and then from there it's Blue World Research. But when we spot a whale and you report it to that 1844 whale number, then you are saving that animal from the large fishing vessels and the shipping vessels. So that is what tells them to move. It has their location, and makes them go up that distance of 500 yards away from these animals. Problem is little boats. So little boats we don't really report to because then the tourists come in and overcrowd it, and then they risk running into it as well. So boat strikes have gone from the biggest danger to a close second, but they are being worked on. But one thing I do, from the acoustic side, I do want to kind of bring out is why do whales fall for boat strikes? Because you think that a whale would hear a boat coming. But I'm going to kind of cite a researcher I know, Edmund Gerstein, on this one. So Edmund is pretty much the primary sound guy in the Southeast. He is from Florida Atlantic University. And he has a really, really good theory that he has a lot of papers that support. And that is a sonic illusion on your boat. So pretend my little remote's a boat. So if you guys are on a boat, where's the motor? Back. Guess what's behind the motor? Big old fat wall. And did you know that the motor sound echoes backwards? So it comes from the side of the boat and from behind the boat, but guess what's completely silent? The part you don't want to be in front of. So when these animals like whales and manatees hear this, they actually go to the silent part intentionally to get away from the noise, and that's what happens to them. So Ed is doing some really groundbreaking work as well. He's actually trying to fill that gap with speakers. He's using motor noises and trying to sonically fill that gap so that the whale can hear the boat coming and help the whale avoid the boat as well as having the boat avoid the whale. So we're trying to hopefully one day, I say we, but as a community for conservation, we want one day for the boats to recognize the whale and the whale to recognize the boats. Because if you're trying for people to not run into each other, it really helps if both sides know where they're coming from. So that is another little thing I kind of wanted to point out on the acoustics before I get into what we're doing. So there's the shore and aerial spotting. So one other big factor for the tracking is shore spotters and planes. So you guys might be familiar with the planes that do donuts over the whales. That's NOAA. They're taking their pictures, they're identifying them, and they're broadcasting their location. So the shore spotters usually alert them, NOAA comes to see who it is, and then the NOAA is the one that enforces that law. Then, wow, so we are already at my nonprofit, okay. Quick plug, guys, I have a nonprofit. Anyway, so Whale Guard has been a personal mission of mine since I really started understanding the right whales, and this was even before I worked at the Ritz-Carlton. I've been proposing papers and talking to researchers and getting peer reviews on this. And one thing that I'm really, really working to do, and the primary mission of Whale Guard is this. We want to know ouch. We want to know what ouch means. Because if we have ouch, no whale would be able to drag that gear too long. We would know exactly where and when it got entangled. Now with current methods, the passive acoustic network might be a little spotty, but it is at least capable of that. So if we understand the call, we would know the time and location of the injury. The other thing that I'm really, really hopeful for, so I'm working with Dr. Alex Zerbini of the University of Washington. He's a NOAA consultant. And he has been able to tag a southern right whale for over a year. Now outside the right whale community, that might not sound like a big deal, but the longest in North Atlantic's been tagged is 11 days. So there's a huge difference between this. So I'm hoping that if his tag is able to acquire an acoustic listening device, that we could have a tag on them where they could call from help anywhere in the world. So that is what we're working on right now. So if we have that, not only would we be able to have help, but we would have a tighter location on where they are pretty much any time of year. So to achieve this, I'm having to partner with a guy that I got a very positive maybe from, so pray for that. But that is Dr. Jeremy Goldenbloom of Stanford University. He's the guy that did a heart rate tag on blue whales, and he's used it on humpbacks. And he said he's never used it on right whales, but he's down for it, but then just has taken a long time to get back. So if we can get that tag, we can actually use real-world analysis, having an EKG similar to a lie detector. You guys are probably familiar with that from Law & Order. So you can correlate the uptick of heart rate to a call, and if that call is associated with an uptick in heart rate, and the whale is breath holding, because the whale's heart rate does increase rapidly when it breathes, by the way. But if it's on its breath hold and it increases, we can positively assume that that is a stressor or arousal. Based on the visual observation of a video, we can tell which one that is. So if we can get a real-world corresponding device to do an R-squared value, R-squared value is fancy for correlation consistency, which still sounds fancy, so it means how likely something is to happen and how associated it is. But if we can get that one-to-one correlation, then we have the distress call. And that is something that I think would be revolutionary for conservation of the right whale. And that's what I'm really pushing towards. Now, of course, a major goal is also to raise awareness. We plan on doing this, so anybody who goes on my website, no, the flights are not working right now. I have to get a new company, so I just haven't removed it from the website. But I am planning on doing that in Palm Coast, Florida now. is a way of potentially getting people in the sky to be able to see these animals on a more regular basis and building that awareness, building that experience. Because right now, a right whale to a lot of people is just a beautiful ghost. It's a Bigfoot. It's an animal that a lot of people that live in this area have not experienced due to its rarity. And to see that animal and to have that lifelong experience, just look how many whale ambassadors are here. Anybody that's seen a right whale wants to save them. And just having that awareness while also being able to participate in that aerial spotting and being able to report past what shore spotters can see. So right now, NOAA operates, and we can't operate in NOAA territory because they do it more often than us. So they operate down to about Ponte Vedra, like Juana is about as far south as they go. So that whole other area, it needs aerial spotting, so we're trying to work to get that going. Now, next year on my website, I will be announcing I'm trying to get sponsorship and grant for this. If I can do that, it'll be free. If not, it'll be a mission ticket, but we shall see. Now, the last thing that we hope to do is raise a whole bunch of money to get rid of those rope traps, because those rope traps are the cause of most of the right whale's troubles. If those rope traps were removed tomorrow, we would actually see positive population gain. Now, of course, we are going to have the lingering ones from the past, because some fishermen lose their line and things like that. But if we had both the distress call tags and removed most of these ropes, that is pretty much what's standing in the way of these animals' recovery. So all we got to do is get rid of rope entanglements and boat strikes. A lot easier said than done, but we're working on it. And there's a lot of beautiful people out here contributing massively to whale conservation. As again, the whale ambassadors, they do a wonderful job up here spreading the word and helping spot. Marine Land Right Whale Project does a fantastic job, and Blue World Research. I will now officially start calling them Blue Water Research because I finally read their initials. But yeah, they are fantastic, and their executive biologist Jameson actually was a big reason encouraging me to do this. So I do always give a shout out to Blue World. But if anybody does want to help me with my cause, here is a giant QR code. That leads to the donation points of the website. So all funds will be going to, right now, specifically to that Argentina project. When we get funding for that, the next objective is the traps, and then from there is the planes. But we are trying to raise money and hopefully get some grant negotiations. This is all still very new. My nonprofit is about a year old, so I'm still a lot in the drafting phase of things. But I do think that combined, all these projects will save this animal. I don't believe this animal is going to go extinct, and I think that within the next 100 years, we could see 2,000 to 20,000 of these guys. So I opened with the recovery of the southern right whale. The southern right whale in Australia was down to 400 individuals. That population is at 5,000, and the global population of southern right whales is at 20,000. So it's something that sounds bad, it's something that sounds hard, but it's something that can be done if we play our cards right. But, yep, that's my big spiel. Anybody have questions?
How much does a ropeless trap cost?
So ropeless traps per trap, I believe, are about I want to say somewhere in the 1,000 range. I don't know for sure yet. I'm still kind of working on that. But the fisheries do complain that they're more expensive than the traditional rope trap. And a lot of it is just something that...
The one that is on display downstairs costs $800.
$800, okay.
That's just the trap, and there's other stuff, but the trap costs $800.
Okay.
And a traditional trap, the one they're using now, how much does it cost?
Probably like $20 at Home Depot with a long rope.
But they lose them a lot, right?
They do lose them a lot, and one of the things that makes the on-demand trap so efficient is nobody can steal your catch. So the lobster boats don't play nice. A lot of them pirate each other. They'll go and they'll find the other people's traps and steal their haul. And that's a big sell to these fisheries. One thing that I hope to do with WhaleGuard is if I do get the opportunity to give out these traps for free, I want to do something similar to Monterey Bay Seafood Watch. Create a label and have that label be to where they can sell their lobster for a little bit of a higher fee for conservation motivation. And that should also, if they get free capital and free investment, I feel like that would be beneficial to them and they'd want to do it, but we shall see. Yes?
How long does the tracker stay on the whale that they're researching right now? The gentleman that you said.
Zerbini, it's about a year and a half.
Okay, and how far can he hear that distress? Like, how does that work?
It's a satellite ping, so if it had the distress, it could do the global ocean.
Okay,
So,
so he's doing a certain amount of.
So if you guys want to do a little bit of homework, his project is called Falkland Islands Right Whale Project. And you can actually see it just like the O-Search pings where it has the tags of the whales and they go around that area. So his is a little bit of a deeper tag than what North Atlantic right whales are used to. So usually North Atlantics, because of how rare they are suction cup tag. He's trying to test if his tags are safe and effective on southern right whales, similar to what we're doing with the heart rate tag. And we could also use the heart rate tag to prove that they're comfortable for the whale as well, because if they cause massive distress, then we'll know that it's not comfortable for the whale. If they don't, then it's, I'm technically tagged. I'm a diabetic, I have a Dexcom. It goes inside me internally, it doesn't bother me too much, so. But, yes sir.
What are the countries that are not participating sufficiently to really help your efforts, American efforts, and the efforts of other countries?
Well, for right whales, sadly, we have nowhere else to point but us in Canada. We're the only countries that the North Atlantic right whale lives in. So it's the U.S. and Canada is the full protection for the North Atlantic. Now, countries that are sloppy on whales in general, though, most of the Scandinavian countries and Japan and China pretty much sums it up. Now, Iceland, I believe it is either Iceland or Norway, but they just recently banned whaling, which is a huge deal because they were huge whalers for a long time. Japan claims they're doing it for study, but it's dissection, so that's still whatever.
It's mortal.
Yeah, China is probably one of the biggest markets because Japan's actually been protesting as a popular movement, as in the Japanese don't eat whale meat. So they're losing that kind of economic pull for it. China, it's really hard to know what's going over there because they don't use the regular internet, so I don't know if there's a similar movement in China. But, yeah. Yes, sir.
Do these right whales here go to, in the spring, Stellwagen Bank and Cape Cod?
They do, yeah.
So they travel.
So they go to Cape Cod in the summer as half the population, and then you have another half up in the Bay of Fundy near Nova Scotia.
Okay.
And one cool thing as a sound researcher I can tell you is they actually have different accents from each other, which is pretty crazy. So the Canadian right will say a boot a little bit more. So you'll hear a little bit like, eh?
Hey.
But yeah, so the right whale calls are actually something I'd love to get into. If anybody wants to hear some whale karaoke, I'm happy to do it. All right. So the most common call that a whale makes, and this is what the Passive Acoustic Network usually uses because it travels farther. And I'm only going to do one variation of it, just so you guys know, since I have time to give a deeper talk than I did at the Story Festival. Right whale calls are malleable, and this is one of the coolest things about studying right whale calls. Does anybody here know what it means to be able to change the properties of your call? It means you're trying to be heard, and that means that you have intent. So if it's an instinctual call, like let's say I stub my toe, I don't care how loud I'm screaming. If there's a whale listening to sound, this was a paper by Dr. Susan Parks dated around 2019. If there's oil rigging, he can change his frequency to be a little bit lower so he can be heard over the oil rigging. So they're able to kind of change these to communicate messages. And as somebody that studies dolphins calls, dolphins have 3 call types, right whales have 6. So out of those dolphin call types, I've been able to identify 147 calls. So that means that right whales have a lot of calls that we haven't really fully deciphered yet. And that's due to the fact that spectrograms are pretty new and it's a lot easier to do it through spectrogram than by your ear. But one really cool thing, so getting back to that call, you guys ready?
Yep.
Here we go. So does anybody know what I just said in right whale? I said, what's up, I'm a right whale, where are my buddies at, let's party. So that specific up call will actually cause the right whales to come here.
Wow.
So they will kind of seek each other. Now again, they can also talk for about 30 miles away, so a lot of times you'll think you're seeing a right whale by himself. He's not by himself, he's talking to his buddy in Tampa. So, but yeah, so once they get together, they do something called a surface aggregate group. And this is one of the reasons why tagging has traditionally been so hard for them. So, one's they shed their skin a lot, and a lot of these tags just fall off. But the other is right whales like to give each other a big old hug when they embrace. So that's 70 tons of whales hugging each other. So they like to pat each other on the back, they rub up on each other. This is called the surface aggregate group. And they switch to this call. Now this is one of 14 variations. Again, I can only do 1 or 2 of these. And here we go. that pretty much means, hey buddy, how's the weather? How you been, dude? You been okay? Well, my favorite right whale calls are when right whale males are about to battle. Now, we call this the gunshot call for a good reason, because if you're going to battle your buddy, you want to sound tough, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, you want to know what sound they make? The sound of a literal shotgun, they say. Extremely loud, right before ramming into each other. Now, here's where it gets cool, though, because I'm going to cite Gerstein's paper again. So, in 2014, they found a gunshot call in a whale that was not a male. Now, in case you guys don't notice, most men might know this, but the ladies don't fight over us, we fight over the ladies. So, this female was not charging another female or anything. What do you think was happening with her?
Getting their attention.
Something else was coming at her.
No, she was a mom, and her baby was playing with a rope. So that gunshot call meant, translated to, you better get over here before I kill you faster than that rope, young man. But yeah, so we know kind of just by inference that the gunshot call is most likely some sort of a whale threat. It's literally found in fighting males and mothers yelling at their children. Now, the other call that I can do, now, please excuse me because I am on Whale Duolingo, I don't understand this last call. But this is the sonic opposite of the up call, it's called the down call. Original, I know, right? So here we go. So that's the down call. And then I can't do the whimper because it's been recorded like twice in human history, but that is mother and calf talking. So that is your right whale call types. Now within these call types, like I said, in dolphin we have whistle, click, and squeak, and there's over 147 variations of all that. So there's a lot of variation that could be found in these whales. Their calls are not as studied as humpback or sperm whale because they are rarer and it's much more difficult to study them. So when it comes to sound science, if anybody's interested in kind of reading scientific journals and kind of studying up, Dr. Susan Parks is a huge name, Dr. Douglas Noviak, and Edmund Gerstein. Edmund Gerstein tends to do the South, and another little fun thing is when they're in the South, due to the fact that they have babies, they are a little bit quieter. So I mentioned that they can change their sound situationally. Now one thing too is, so when you're talking about right whales in the South, well they have no predators or nothing threatens them in the North, but they have babies that they gotta watch out for. So they don't want to be broadcasting to all the great white sharks like, hey, here's my baby. So they try to muffle those calls a little bit more, and they don't do that acoustic herding as much when they have babies for that very reason. So because something like a white shark actually could kill a calf at its younger stages. Now an adult right whale's fine; he can KO an orca with a single flick of his tail. But by KO I mean like that orca is going to have a cracked skull and be dead. So they are a very powerful animal. They are one of the strongest animals. They also have the historic reputation of being a fight whale. So if you guys don't know, the whalers used to classify them two ways, fight whale or flight whale. Flight whales were the rope whales, they're fast and got away, except for the humpback, he likes to strap. But the fight whales were the slower ones that would sit back and fight the boat. So that's where you get that terminology, fight whale versus flight whale. Another reason why the disentanglements can be so difficult sometimes. Now they're very peaceful animals. They are gentle animals, especially in their calm state. I've seen plenty of videos of southern right whales pushing somebody along on a paddleboard, just playing with them, being sweet. But if you're actively stabbing it, it's going to defend itself. And they are fully capable of sinking a galleon. So they are very, very powerful animals. But, yeah. Yes, sir.
Are offshore windmills a threat to right whales?
Glad you asked. That's one that I've been hearing for a while now. So they have found no correlation. They've done studies in New England. One thing that could have been a possibility was the construction itself, because if a lot of people don't understand how marine construction works, they usually shoot sound cannons to kind of scout the land. And that, if it's done sloppy, can disorient whales. But typically there's somebody that has qualifications like myself, called a protected species observer, or a PAM, a passive acoustic monitor, that would tell the moon to shut down if there's a whale nearby. Yep.
How about sonar?
Sonar? So sonar can actually disorient certain species of whale, but it's usually tooth that use sonar themselves. The frequency is not really too far into the hearing of the bigger whales. Baleen whales hear low frequency, dolphins, sperm whales listen to high frequency more. So it has to do with difference in navigation. As a matter of fact, a lot of people don't know this. Did you know baleen whales don't do echolocation whatsoever? They can't see with sound. They actually navigate by listening to things rather than trying to make mental images. And they also have a little bit more of a sense of smell than toothed whales as well. It's still terrible. It's probably about my sense of smell. I lost my smell elephant keeping, but that's all another story. But yeah, so whales have a little bit of a simulance. Yes, ma'am.
So circling back a little bit, you were talking about how the fishing traps and the problems they cause, and then you were talking about maybe providing them to people.
Mhm.
Have you maybe talked to people about approaching politicians for things maybe like tax credits or something?
That would be brilliant.
In the meantime,
Nope.
it's just spitballing, really. Maybe something to make it more attractive while you're getting everything together.
So I don't know, I would love to try that. I don't really know how to do a lot of this stuff in New England. So I do have a little bit of connections there. I've been contacted by the guy who literally sued 1,000 times to get the regulations, Max Strahan. So if there's somebody that can do that, it's probably him. But I would like to try to make that once I get a little bit more established. And so I have heard complaints, at least in the New England area, of a lot of things that are legislation that are just not being enforced. Like technically speaking, the rope traps are banned from Massachusetts, but practically speaking, nobody cares. So it's just getting that awareness that that is a law and that it is something that should be followed.
Okay.
Yes, ma'am.
I have a question. What type of whale goes to Hawaii?
Oh, that would be the humpback whale.
It's a humpback.
Yeah, so humpbacks, we actually have one that comes by the Ritz-Carlton every year. We named him Humpy. But, yeah, I know, right? I'm just as good as these guys at naming things. But yeah. So Humpy got lost during a hurricane in 22, and he just keeps coming back. Yeah. Yes, sir.
If we know that ropeless traps help, do we know how many traps need to be replaced?
Probably thousands at the very least. So it's gonna be a big stretch. I know Canada's leading us a little bit in that. I know there's been a lot of positive stuff in Quebec and Nova Scotia to where Canada has been enforcing their bans a little bit more heavily than we have. And it has to do with just getting, it's one thing to have the politicians behind you, but you gotta really have the population behind you, so that awareness is everything. And just kind of having that motion. So let's think back to the original battle, the end of whaling, the Marine Mammal Protection Act. Well, you had centuries and centuries of whales being treated like sea monsters or capital or whatever. Well, then all it took was the sound of one animal, the humpback whale. When we heard that humpback song, we recognized something. Intelligence. Intelligence recognizes intelligence. And we had sympathy for it almost instantly because we recognized it as an intelligent animal. And that beautiful song of the humpback is literally what saved all whales to this day. People really shouldn't underestimate that. Yes, ma'am.
How about a charity, a 501(c), where people can donate money and take it off their taxes?
That's what I am.
That's what you are.
So you accept checks.
Yeah, well, I accept whatever at this point. I got like $300 left for my investments.
Go to the QR code slide so they can.
Oh, I didn't realize I went back up. I must have been poking.
There you go. There it is. Support the mission.
I was just wondering the size of like the family.
What's mom? Oh yeah.
I was just saying, you have to say the charity word and tax deductible.
Yes, I should.
Yeah.
No taxes whatsoever. Also, we have a cool logo. But
So I was just wondering, like their family groups, like how do their pods, like what size are they? How do
so typically they're found spread apart a lot because they can communicate from that vast distance. You'll occasionally see two females traveling together. One of the weirdest trips last year was two female right whales, Koala and Curfew. Koala took a trip, and Curfew took a trip to Alabama randomly. And then when they were supposed to be back in New England, they hung out in the Bahamas for about a month, and then they decided to go home. So they're
bad girls.
Oh yeah. So they ended up not just in the Gulf of Mexico, but the Bahamas. Those are two places right whales traditionally don't go. But yeah, so you'll tend to see them looking like they're solitary, but again, those acoustic herds are really hard to keep track of. So we actually don't know how many are actually communicating through that acoustic herd method. Paper dated to about like maybe 3 years ago. They did do an observation where they formally measured the time of these whales diving. One was closer to up Martha's Vineyard, one was closer to Nantucket, and they did literally instantly dive down with each other to the second. So when they're in that acoustic herd, they can cooperate. They can kind of wing a little bit. And one of my other favorite things, speaking about last season, so it's going to sound a little rocky at first, but 2 years ago, that one specific copepod they like had a rough season. It's recovered. But the right whales, rather than starve to death, showed their own intelligence. They started feeding in a completely new method that's never been observed before. They innovated. So they started swimming in what we call an echelon, that's bird bees for common English. And they started literally shoveling copepods into the right whale behind them's mouth. So they started to get that higher concentration and still be able to feed themselves with less of a resource. And that shows the brilliance of these animals. These are not dumb animals. These animals are most likely on par with a humpback whale or a sperm whale or a dolphin. I mean, as somebody who studied dolphin and dolphin culture specifically, cetaceans are incredibly clever. And what we're looking at is just very small numbers. And the fact that they even have population differences at 385 is insane to me. The fact that that was only half of a pun. They really do have different dialects from between Canada and Massachusetts. So, yeah.
Thank you so much. Surveys that are on the chairs, please, and drop them in our little basket back here.
No, don't say that.
Now, so you know.
Excellent. Thank you for coming out, everybody. We always love seeing you. Thank you.
Hope everybody enjoyed it. Thank you. Oh, well done.
Well
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Yeah, I'm expecting the southern right whales to have a southern.